Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Dog Classroom podcast. I'm Anne-Marie.
And I'm Amelia.
And what we are going to chat today, I don't want to say that it's advanced training. I brought that word up in class the other day, and everybody gets worried about the word advanced. But I think this is going to be fun because we talk a lot about basic training. Now we want to talk about the next level. So next level being the 3 Ds.
Yeah.
So we have distance, duration, and distraction.
Okay.
So
why don't we break those down?
Okay, yes. So what I feel like we need to do with the 3 Ds is we base our next step class around those 3 Ds.
Yeah.
Right? We try to remind people, I still say that we should paint it on the wall, right? The 3 Ds for them to remember. I think most people at least get 2 of them, but I find a lot of people don't adjust their training correctly because we do encourage you to do one train with 1 D or work on increasing that D one at a time. Okay, so with duration, what does that mean? That basically means staying longer.
Or doing whatever the behavior is for a longer period.
Period of time, okay. Distraction is the doozy.
Yes,
right?
Because the distraction is, I think, where everybody falls apart.
Yeah, they forget about that. If the dog can do it in the house, then the dog can do it anywhere. Does not work that way, okay. Duration, distraction, distance is huge.
Yes.
So what we just did in the recall seminar is we just talked actually about training distance with a long line.
We did.
So not to expect that just because the dog listens on a 6-foot leash that the dog's going to listen 20 feet away.
So, okay, I want to break this down a little bit more.
Okay, cool.
Because I think we know what we're talking about, but in general, when we have a new behavior, so let's just take sit, for example, okay? We want to teach the puppy to sit, so we start with a lure, then we start with fading the lure, we get into a hand signal, okay? Then, for beginning with basics anyway, we sort of finish off there, and then people think they're done. Right? So you have your verbal cue and your hand signal, and that's all you need. But it's not about what they can do in the classroom, right? We need them to be able to apply those things to their everyday lives.
Right.
So that is where I think there's a little bit of a struggle because people don't necessarily know how to take the basics and then move them into actual useful behaviors. Okay. And so that's what our class called The Next Step, that's what it's all about, is trying to take those 3 Ds, the distance, duration, distraction, apply them to all the different skills that they're learning so that you can use them.
Right.
So if we're thinking about sit, for example, let's talk about distraction. So what could be a distraction when you're teaching sit? Well, it depends where you are.
Yeah.
So,
honestly, being outside can be a distraction.
It can, and what are the distractions? Birds, traffic,
smells,
people, dogs,
noises,
smells, everything.
Yeah.
Right? So when you're thinking about the level of distraction, sometimes people will go, oh, well, it's just my backyard. Well, that's not just, right? That's very distracting.
Yeah.
So I always try to add in distraction, depending on the dog, as little as possible, right? You want to do it in baby steps. You don't want to
learn the behavior.
Yeah.
Once they learn the behavior, how
then
do you
add
then
the distraction?
Yeah.
So if we're trying to do sit in the kitchen, for example, so that's where everybody likes to do their training. They have their little jar of dog treats. They get the dog to sit in the kitchen. Great. So the dog can sit when you have a little treat in front of them. Wonderful. Can the dog sit in the kitchen with the radio playing? Can the dog sit in the kitchen with another household member standing there? Can they sit
with you moving around?
With you moving, yeah. So there's all different things that could be distraction, right? So when we pull out that one piece, we want to make sure we're focused on distraction. Then we want to go for distance, for example. So let's say I want my dog to, I don't know, sit over there while I pick up after them on a walk, right? I want them to sit just a little bit away so they don't pull me into stuff,
okay?
So now that we have that, we are going to 2 sort of different pillars there. We are going distraction, because we are outside.
Yeah.
and distance. So we can't expect the dog to do that right off the bat.
Right.
We have to train those as two separate things. So we do training with the distraction. Then I'm going to do the same thing with distance. I'm going to start in a quiet environment, low distraction, and I'm going to turn my back to my dog. Turn around and give them a treat. I'm going to take one step away from my dog. Turn around and go back to them. So I'm going to break out the distance as its own sort of training challenge.
Right.
Before I try to put them together.
Right. But the kicker in there is duration gets thrown in automatically, because the longer you ask the dog to sit there in order to complete the task of poop scooping, they need to sit there for 5 to 10 seconds.
But we can break that down too.
Right.
So when we're working at home, low distraction, no distance, we're really close to our dog. Instead of feeding them every 2 seconds, we are pausing in between treats, trying to work our way up to that 5-10 seconds,
right.
Rewarding them, releasing them. When we put it all together, we're not just gonna go, okay, now they know all three, we're gonna go outside and poop scoop and they're gonna sit there and stay. Probably not gonna happen.
Right.
We're gonna go, okay, I'm gonna practice at home with me, let's say outside in the backyard, but close to my dog. So now we have distraction and we have sort of the duration piece, but we're not going too far from that.
Right.
Then we're gonna put, maybe duration and distance. Maybe we go a little bit further from them, but we're in the kitchen.
Right.
So we're taking the distraction piece out. Then we try to take it all together, but we don't just assume, right? We have to train with all three of those things. So I'm gonna pretend to be scooping after my dog while they sit and while they stay, and then I'm gonna make sure that I have rewards ready to go.
Right.
So that I can teach them, hey, we can do it in this situation and it still pays off.
Right.
So when we're talking about the 3Ds and adding those different pieces, that's what we're talking about for each different thing that you teach your dog.
Right, yeah. And that's how you progress your training. Like Amelia's saying, a lot of people think you train sit in the house and that's it, because we'll be outdoors in classes or something and I'll say, please have your dog sit. And people get frustrated and they're like, well, they know how to do it at home. And I just look at them and like, yes, but we're not in your house. There's a distraction component. And unfortunately, again, there's a lot of assumptions and misunderstandings as to how dogs learn. Yeah. So the 3Ds come up a lot. I think maybe we should almost mention them more because it is a huge learning curve.
It is. And I think that's why we have, like, when people ask, oh, okay, so like, what is the next step? Is it just the same as this? It's not the same, right? It's the same exercises. It's those foundations.
The same, what I say, core behaviors, but you need to now build on them so that the dog can actually repeat those behaviors for different periods of time, different amounts of time, different locations, as well as different distances.
Yeah, so then, okay, let's talk about another behavior that we talk about this with, go to mat.
Yeah, I think sometimes I would almost say the go to mat is a little bit easier for me to explain than say the sit.
Okay.
Well, yes and no, but how the majority of people train a sit and a stay. But the problem to me, let's go back, to sit stay again, is the duration of the sit stay is not reinforced and it is not practiced enough with distraction, so the dog usually fails.
Yeah, and I think it's the same. What I see sometimes with go to mat is the humans get so attached to, I call it babysitting, like standing there, pointing at the mat, dropping treats every second, not actually putting in any of those 3Ds because, well, of course we have distraction when we're in class, but when you're at home, if you're just at home sitting right beside your mat, 0 distance, 0 distraction, and you're treating every second, there's no duration either, so they can't possibly get better.
Right,
at that
but
behavior.
They get in the zone that's how they have to train it, and then it's never altered.
Yeah, so that's what we're saying is we want to help people understand that so that they can practice it and they can alter that at home. So, for example, if we're doing go to mat at home, the dog has to know all the foundations first. They have to do, finding the mat, laying down on the mat, staying until they hear the release cue.
Yeah.
Okay, so once they have that, then we can add the 3Ds. So let's say we talked about counter surfing in a previous episode. Let's say we want to work on counter surfing, right? We're in the kitchen, we're asking the dog to stay, but there is a steak on the counter.
Yeah.
So we are increasing distraction, but we can be nice and close to our dog and we can reward really frequently.
Yeah.
Then we're gonna go, okay, I'm gonna walk over to that stake. Then we're adding the distance piece. So we're walking over to the stake. Yeah.
Okay.
But we're throwing treats to the dog.
Right. So rewarding at a distance.
Yes.
Yes.
But the duration between treats is not as long because we're still throwing them treats. Then once they can sort of do that in that situation, that's when we would go, okay, go to mat, go do our thing, release them and move on with our day, right? We can't necessarily expect them to do that without breaking down those pieces. So that's another one where I find the 3Ds sort of get missed.
Yeah.
I don't know if you find the same thing.
Yeah, and I think it's assuming, again, for the owners that if they train it at home, they train it in the training space, the dog should be able to do it outside or at Boulevard.
Yeah.
And
or if you take your dog to a patio and you have them, or you take your dog to record a podcast.
So you know what is change, change your expectations.
Yeah.
Right? So, or increase your rate of reinforcement. So like Amelia said, the other thing I'm doing here is increasing my rate of reinforcement. So
which means?
Increasing rate of reinforcement mean I was actually dropping treats and feeding B more often. Mm-hmm. Right? Now that Maui's settled, it's a little bit less, but I also have his mat right beside my chair.
Exactly.
I'm not rewarding him further away.
Yeah, it's a new environment. It's a lot going on. We're talking. We're not paying a lot of attention to him, so he's close. He's getting rewarded more frequently, and we're not expecting him to just do it like he would at home.
Right.
Because we're here. Same thing when people go, oh, the patio's dog friendly. They take the dog. You need to bring treats with you. You need to reward them for staying. You can't just ignore the dog and hope that
and expect them to sit under the table and behave.
Yeah, especially there's food. Right? That's a big distraction. There's people, there's noises, there's
smells.
Possibly other dogs. Like there's so much going on that we really need to break out those things and make them into training opportunities before we try to use the behavior for real.
Right. So again, what we're saying is be aware of the 3Ds. We're not saying at all, like, don't take your dog into any situations if they're not prepared. We want you to have a plan.
Yes.
And you want to have reasonable expectations.
Yeah.
Is what you need to have. So let's do it this way. I want to do walking for a second.
You do walking.
Okay. So, because I can picture it. So I actually want to talk about it in breaking it down. So what we do is, first of all, just getting the dog to pay attention to the owner.
Yeah.
Okay. Then what we work at is the dog walking longer beside their hip. So repeating 1, 2, 3, or doing like a heel cue. The miss of it is people assume just because they give them one treat on their hip that the dog is going to stay there for a period of time.
Right.
A lot of people get fixated that the dog should walk beside them. Should walk beside them, but unless you've taught your dog to do that, so many more good things happen in front of you, such as smells, different sounds, that sort of thing. So you almost have to encourage the dog to walk with you, and good things happen there as well.
Right, and I always say in my classes, so we talk about leash walking, and then the next week I go, okay, how many of us brought treats on walks? Oh. Yeah. So when you are training sit, everybody's happy to have the treat pouch, and they're happy to reward the dog. And then you talk about walking, and it's should. They should walk beside me. But we have to teach that. We have a whole other episode on that way back from season 1.
Right.
But it's about rewarding that behavior in different scenarios. You can't just do it in class.
Right.
And then they know.
Yeah.
So continue.
The tricky thing about walking is, I think that is our main source of exercise for our dogs to throw in there. There's lots of other ways to exercise dogs, but it's also important for dogs to get used to dealing with the world on leash, because that's the way our society are. There are leash bylaws. They're there for a reason. But again, it's about expectations. Like, I'm not going to take a client to the marina to teach them leash manners. Right. Like, no way. We start in the training space.
Yeah.
In
In the building.
In the building.
Inside.
Okay.
Yes.
First of all, distractions in there smells, but a lot of times we can get rid of other things. And then what we do is then we move to the driveway. The bonus about the driveway is we have no traffic, we have no random people walking by, that sort of thing to set them up for success. So it's about teaching those new skills and for them to want to move with us. Then you start to add the distraction component. So it's like a 3 or 4 week thing, right? Then you get onto the driveway and then we might walk in a cul-de-sac. Then eventually, you know, we might walk at the marina off time.
Yeah.
Off time not being, you know, Saturday afternoon. But the thing is, we're very aware of the 3Ds. So I think when suggestions are made by the instructors about the process.
Yes.
I'm going to go to that word, the process, because again,
It is a process.
It is a process. I've been using that for the last 2 weeks, and I've actually had clients keep telling me over and over again it's a process. So I'm like, okay, we're getting somewhere here.
Yeah.
Right? Where, you know, you have the people that come, well, I need my dog to walk in heel, and it's like, it's not going to happen.
No.
I'm not going to tell anybody that I can train that in one session, or I don't even tell them your dog will not walk in heel after a 7-week session. Especially,
right?
no, especially if it's a younger dog, because you have the whole mental, emotional development, hormones, blah, 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 right?
And also the whole, you know, what are walks for? Should they be walking in heel? But anyway, no, but I think like adding those 3Ds with the walking. So you're talking about like, let's say distance, for example. I think of it a little differently when I'm thinking of like walking versus recall, for example. So recall, your distance is how far away is the dog that you can call them towards you,
right?
And they will still listen.
Right.
When you're walking, ideally, you're not necessarily, if you're on leash, your dog's not necessarily all that far away from you, but it's, can you still be on their radar? Like, are you still, you know, the dog's out sniffing or something and you say puppy and you try to get their attention, can they look at you?
Right.
So the distance isn't going to be huge.
But it can also be about distance from the house. It can be distance walking. Some dogs can walk 5K.
Yeah.
Some dogs walk 1 kilometer and start chewing on the leash.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so how long of a walk can they go on? I guess that works with distance and duration.
Yeah.
For me, I think of duration when we're walking as like time between treats. Basically, how long am I asking them to hold that heel or whatever until we can reward again or until they need another reward, otherwise they're going to yo-yo back and forth. And then the distraction is the biggest piece for walking, because it's different if, like you said, you live semi-rural, you see, you know, the odd dog, the odd person, the odd squirrel, whatever, like once every 10 minutes on your walk. But if you go down to a super popular place and you see a dog every 3 steps and you see a person every 3 steps, the duration of your walk should be less. You should walk for,
because there's a lot more going on. I think let's talk about the 3Ds. And Amelia's talking about walking now. I think what's being missed is the mental stimulation component.
Yes. And so I don't want to forget about that when we're training our walking.
Right.
Like, I think we need to separate. We've talked about the different kinds of walks. There's like decompression walk, long line, going whatever. Yeah. There's exercise walk, off leash, running back and forth, blah, blah, blah. And then there's training walk where we're working on some skills. Right. This would be for like the training portion of the walk.
Right. But when you're going to the marina, so Amelia's talking about more things are going on, that means more mental stimulation. That means more mental work as well as walking. And I find the majority of dogs, honestly, will get more tired. They don't need to go there for a 2-hour walk because sometimes it's too much. Yeah. So the idea is, you know, then go for 20 minutes because there's a lot going on. I just think, and we've talked about this before, and I'm not trying to get off topic, but people get into the fixation where they need to exercise their dog. Just remember that if you create the stamina and then 10K walk every day, that's what you're doing.
Yeah, you have an athlete, and then you need to continue to do that. Yeah. I like mixing that mental stimulation in with the walking. Like yesterday, we didn't go for a super long walk, but we did some parkour on the walk. So we did some tricks.
So you just didn't go as far.
Yep. So we did a little bit more mental stimulation. So back to the 3Ds, because I think there's so many examples that we can pull from. Like the stay is another one that, I know we talked about the sit a little bit and the go to mat, but the stay, I find so many people go, well, my dog can't do that, and give up. And I'm probably one of those people, but it's not because I think my dog can't do it, it's because I haven't put the work in.
Yeah.
So when we think about like Nuggie, for example, my Chihuahua mix, she does agility, she needs a start line stay. I have not put in the work to get a start line stay in a competition. So when we go to a competition, do I put her in a stay and then get upset that she didn't do it? No. We have another plan. We do a couple spins, we do a couple tricks, and then we go together. So having those expectations of the stay and of these different behaviors and going, okay, have I actually put that work in before we get upset about the dog not being able to do that thing.
Yeah.
And then the leave it, honestly, is another one.
Okay, yeah, go with that. Go with that.
Because with the leave it, so, and I know we're getting a little tight on time here, but just with the leave it, when we think about distraction, so there's, yes, the value of the food that they're leaving. The other thing that comes up a lot is another dog being present.
Yes.
It adds another layer.
It does.
So my dog can do this. Yeah, my dog can do this by themselves, and then, you know, my other dog walks by and they take it.
Yeah.
It's, they need to learn that, right? That it's not something that they only do in a bubble. It exists.
In a bubble,
at all times.
Yeah.
The duration piece, so when we're talking about things like counter surfing or going to a patio or whatever, it's not, say, leave it every 2 seconds. Nobody wants to do that. It's leave it once and get away from the thing.
Yeah.
So that duration piece, and we talk about that in class sometimes, like, I know it always comes up, like if you drop medication or you drop something that the dog can't have, they need to stay away from it long enough for you to pick everything up.
Yeah.
So there's different reasons why you would use duration with leave it. The distance thing, we know from dealing with reactive dogs, it's much easier to leave something 40 feet away than it is to leave something that's on the table right in front of you.
Yeah.
So having the distance sort of closing in that scenario makes it harder.
Yeah.
And then when you're working on the distraction and the distance and the duration and you're putting it all together, that's most of our real life leave-its.
Yes.
Because if we're outside, we're picking up garbage.
Yeah.
There's distraction, there's probably another dog walking by, there's whatever. There's distance being closed because we are walking on the sidewalk beside that thing. And then there's duration of we're gonna keep walking. We're not gonna go back to that thing. So I find that one a little bit interesting too, that we have to break it down a little bit more because sometimes people will go, wow, my dog can leave a milk bone on their feet.
Yeah.
Great,
At home.
cute party trick, love it, but also need to work on the other pieces.
Right, and I think with the examples we're giving you, the reason why we're giving you these examples is just trying to get owners to understand that it's not just about teaching the sit down, leave it in the house. It's about widening the horizons because I think the majority of us want to be social with our dogs and take them places.
Yeah.
So there's a little more to it.
There is.
There's more to it. And, you know, not to say after level 1, you know, some people don't come back and they don't, but we're just trying to get you to understand is just because they know those basic behaviors doesn't mean they're ready to be successful at all different environments in life.
Yeah.
So what we're really trying to encourage you to do is absolutely get the basics, but then have a clear plan and realistic expectations.
Yes.
I'm articulating that in how to further your training and get your dog to do or want to do those behaviors in different environments. And I think the reason why we're reminding you guys about the 3Ds is we're trying to get you guys to understand how the dogs learn and what things are important in them learning and being successful.
Yeah, and having them continue to learn and not just, oh, they can follow the lure, they've got it, they can do the behavior, there's lots more to it. There's, of course, even more that goes into it that, you know, we as professionals sort of take into account as we're going. So like, we talk about push, drop, stick, like when to make it harder, when to make it easier, when to stay where you're at. So there's lots of things that we could take into account, but I think the biggest one that people miss is the 3Ds, and that's why we wanted to do this episode to sort of throw that out there and have people thinking about it a bit more.
So what we're encouraging you guys to do is distance, duration, distraction. Take the behavior that you're interested in and how would you increase one of those to educate your dog how to do that behavior for either a longer period of time at a further distance or more distraction, and see how we say one behavior. You know, don't go out and expect them to train 5 behaviors in an environment they've never been in.
Yeah.
So let's work on one behavior, look at those 3 Ds, and then step back another behavior. It's, you know, to me, owning an animal, owning a dog, the training is part of the fun.
Yeah.
I think, you know, and I'm very aware, we are very aware that not all people feel like that. They just, you know, want that dog to be a little more successful. Well, not to say that we don't, but the idea is if we set them up for success, they will be successful. It's important just to take the time, you know, and the time we usually say is the first year or 2. If you're getting an adult dog, the time might be 4 to 6 months for adjustment period. Right? Our children, as well as us, don't learn everything within a few years. Even, you know, dogs are a little bit accelerated, but, you know, we go to school for years.
Yeah. Well, and, you know, just because the child learns the alphabet doesn't mean they know how to read and all that. So basically, to sum it up, what we're saying is take it slow, break things down, set your dog up for success, and practice distance, duration, distraction one at a time.
Okay, and one other thing, if you're not sure how to do that, that's where your trainer comes into play.
Yeah.
That's what we're there for. We can help you set up a plan. Make sure that your trainer, again, has the education, right? Certified dog trainer, and is able to do that and help you through it.
Awesome.
Okay.
All right, thank you so much for tuning in. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.